Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump says he's confident of striking a deal with China's Xi Jinping after 2 days of trade talks in Kuala Lumpur. US officials Scott Bessent and Jameson Greer met with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and negotiator Li Changgang to ease tensions in the long-running trade war. The leaders of Thailand and Cambodia have signed an enhanced ceasefire deal in Kuala Lumpur in the presence of US President Donald Trump, formally ending their deadly border conflict. The agreement builds on a July truce brokered after Trump urged both sides to halt fighting or risk losing trade talks with Washington. The United States and Vietnam have reached a framework for a reciprocal, fair and balanced trade deal that will give exporters unprecedented market access. Under the agreement, the US will keep a 20% tariff on Vietnamese goods while identifying select products eligible for zero tariffs. Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces say they have seized the army's main headquarters in Al-Fashir, the military's last stronghold in Darfur. The army has not yet commented on the claim, which marks a major escalation in the year-long power struggle. At least 4 people are killed and 20 are wounded as Russia launches missile and drone attacks across Ukraine. In Kiev, 2 die and 13 are injured after ballistic missiles hit the capital, sparking fires and damage to buildings, prompting new pleas from President Zelensky for Western air defences. US President Donald Trump says he will increase tariffs on Canada by an additional 10%, announcing the move on Truth Social after blasting an Ontario ad aired during the World Series. He ends trade talks with Ottawa as the ad quotes Ronald Reagan, warning that tariffs trigger trade wars and economic damage. The Kurdish group PKK calls on Turkey to take immediate legal steps to safeguard the peace process and allow its fighters to enter democratic politics. In a statement from northern Iraq, the group says freedom and democratic integration laws must be implemented without delay. President Vladimir Putin says Russia has successfully tested its nuclear-powered Bereskovik cruise missile, claiming it can evade any defense system. The missile flew 14,000 kilometers over 15 hours during the October the 21st test, according to Russia's top general, Valery Gerasimov. We start in the Indo-Pacific this hour, where China's top trade negotiator, Li Changgang, says Beijing and Washington have reached a consensus to enhance communication after candid and in-depth discussions on trade issues. According to him, talks covered a range of sensitive topics, including tariffs, export controls, port fees, fentanyl cooperation, and trade expansion. Li emphasized that China is firm in safeguarding its interests, but is also seeking stability amid what he called recent fluctuations in bilateral trade relations. Both sides reportedly signaled a willingness to handle differences properly and prevent tensions from escalating, suggesting a modest but meaningful step towards stabilizing US-China economic ties. We're now joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute and he joins us live from Tokyo to discuss this further. Dr. Nagao, these talks have concluded in the Malaysian capital of Kuala Lumpur. Is all that's left to do is to show the presidents this piece of paper, and is there anything left to sign, to do, or is there still sticking points to go over? What further actions are left to be taken?
Firstly, they should agree something, especially related with rare earth supply from China to the United States, or as a related issue with tariffs, as a retaliation. These are the matter of concern just now. Of course, there are a variety of the issues related with, for example, the China's exports, Russia's export to China about the oil. These are the issues related with Russia's invasion to Ukraine. These are the issues. But at the same time, indeed, the short-term and long-term agreement is different, I think, because currently United States focusing on the Russian issue, Middle East issue to seek the ceasefire. Without solving these issues, United States cannot concentrate the China issue. So that's why in the long run, the U.S. thinks China is very important, but in the short term, U.S. want to postpone this confrontation between U.S. and China. So that's why in this case, U.S. seeks agreement with China is logical based on this situation. That's what happened. In case of China, it looks like China has some strong diplomatic card, looks like the rare earth supply dominance, or as I said, if the China continue to support Russia, Russia can continue the invasion to Ukraine. So this means that the U.S. cannot concentrate, and the U.S. Mediation of this issue will not success if the China continue to support Russia. So that's why these are the China's card. So in the short term, China has the advantage, it looks like. But in the long run, we should not forget this thing. The China's economy is not recovering. Why? Because the U.S.-China confrontation is escalating. U.S. pressure is contributing, and U.S. Pressure creates a situation that many investors in the world hesitate to invest to China. So that's why China cannot recover their economy so well. So in the long run, indeed, the decoupling process between U.S. and China is still developing, and China faces a more tough situation compared with the past. So in the long run, the U.S. has advantage. In the short term, U.S. has a disadvantage, and China has advantage. That's what happened in the short term. They agree. But in the long run, this hasn't ended yet.
Yeah, and of course, Dr. Nagao, what some of the leverage China does have is these rare earth minerals. What is the importance of them?
This is very important. Simply, the most important example of how important this issue is 30% of the U.S. Weapons for the U.S. military is using parts made in China. So that's why this made in China parts, of course, use China's rare earth or other material made in China. So without this, without trade with China, the U.S. cannot prepare enough military against China. So this is an ironical situation. But to solve these issues, one by one, they need to change. So long run is needed. Just temporary, just now the U.S. need to change is not feasible. So that's why this U.S.-China competition should be the long run, not short term. So that's why this is a serious issue. But at the same time, one by one, step by step, U.S. is solving this issue, I think.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Nagao. Do stay with us. We have further news coming out of Malaysia, where at the ASEAN Summit in the Malaysian capital, President Donald Trump has reaffirmed Washington's commitment to Southeast Asia, declaring the United States is, quote, with them 100%. Speaking alongside Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, Trump said both nations had signed a major trade agreement while hailing what he called a golden age for the U.S. economy. The summit also saw the signing of the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accords, marking an end to hostilities between Cambodia and Thailand. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Anwar highlighted the region's deepening economic ties with the United States, noting record-high two-way trade last year. Trump's Asia visit aims to strengthen partnerships across the Indo-Pacific, with new deals expected in energy, technology and defence cooperation. Let's take a listen in to what the President has stated in Malaysia.
Today, the Prime Minister and I signed a major trade deal between the United States and Malaysia, and together We took part in the signing of a historic peace agreement ending the hostilities between Cambodia and Thailand. We're calling it the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accords. Once again, want to congratulate Prime Minister Hun Manet of Cambodia and Prime Minister Anut of. In addition to the agreement with Malaysia this week, we're also signing or nearing completion on trade deals with many other Indo-Pacific partners from Cambodia to Japan to South Korea. We're delighted to forge richer partnerships on energy technology, artificial intelligence, critical minerals, and other industries. The United States is having its golden age.
We're now joined by Professor Rohan Gunaratne, and he's an international affairs expert, and he joins us live from Singapore. Thank you very much, Professor Gunaratne, for joining us here on the programme. Of course, Donald Trump came with an extremely aggressive tariff policy. Many of these Southeast Asian nations were some of the hardest hit in the world, with the likes of Vietnam and Cambodia hit with 46, 47% tariffs when Donald Trump first held up that board. How does Donald Trump view these countries economically, the potential of these countries, and why is he there today, and what agenda is he ready to push forward there?
Thomas, what we have seen today is that the United States has started very effectively to negotiate and make deals with the ASEAN region, which is the fastest growing region in the world. Trump is seen both as a businessman and as a peacemaker, as a deal maker. So what we have seen is also the signing of the Cambodia-Thailand agreement. Although the Thais do not want to call it a peace agreement, they have effectively the war has stopped. Trump has said that he will have a very high tariff if they return back to war. What is important to know is that Trump's visit is viewed very positively. The only negative thing in the ASEAN Summit is, of course, that Prime Minister Modi did not come and attend the event. But again, Prime Minister has been very well represented by Indian officials and other political leaders who will fill that void.
Yes, and of course, it can't go amiss that signing has happened. Is Donald Trump's visit here a lot of optics? Of course, it's a lot of optics. We heard him cite the name there, the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accords, as a significant point of that speech there, made a big deal about it. Is that him solidifying his image as this global peacemaker, saying, I have got this one? What are your thoughts on that, Professor Gunaratne?
Very much. What Trump did was to send a very clear message to Thailand and to Cambodia. And he has, in fact, said that he will increase the tariffs if they don't agree to peace, and also if peace is not going to sustain. So in many ways, he claimed credit for this peace agreement, but in many ways it was Malaysia, it was Anwar Ibrahim working with the United States that accomplished this feat. But of course, Cambodia and Thailand itself wanted peace very badly because both these countries suffered when they started to fight on the border.
Yes, Professor Rohan Gunaratne, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to speak to you here on NewsX World. We now move over to Europe, where Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced the successful final test of the Burevestnik nuclear-powered cruise missile. Speaking during a meeting with military officials, Putin confirmed that the decisive tests are now complete and ordered preparations to deploy the missile into Russia's armed forces. The Burevestnik, which is called by NATO as the SSCX-9 Skyfall, is a ground-launched, low-flying cruise missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead and powered by a miniature nuclear reactor. Russia's military chief, Valery Gerasimov, confirmed the missile flew for about 15 hours, covering 14,000 kilometers during the October the 21st test. Putin hailed the weapon as unique, claiming it has an unlimited range and can evade any missile defense system. The missile, which was first unveiled in 2018, uses nuclear propulsion to extend flight time and distance. This potentially allows it to travel in continental ranges while maintaining low altitude to avoid radar detection. Let's listen in to what Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, had to say.
И вот сейчас решающие испытания завершены. Предстоит еще большая работа по тому, чтобы поставить это оружие на боевое дежурство. Это понятно, там нужно все регламенты осуществить. Но тем не менее, ключевые задачи сейчас они достигнуты.
Now we're joined by Alison Mutler. She's the former Associated Press bureau chief in Romania, and she joins us live from London. Alison, it's a pleasure to have you here on the programme to talk to you about the recent developments in the east of Europe. Alison, some worrying developments here from Russia. Of course, some announcements from Putin. What do you think NATO will be thinking at this announcement? Of course, they have named it something, they already have this capability. However, what will they be thinking now that Vladimir Putin has made this announcement?
Well, first of all, I would like NATO to comment on what Vladimir Putin said. All the information we have, which is definitely an escalation in the conflict between the West and NATO and Russia, is only coming from Moscow. It's only coming from Gerasimov, the Russian military chief, and from Vladimir Putin. You saw that Vladimir Putin, when he made the announcement, he was dressed in military clothes. That is sending a message to the world: I'm a military leader, I'm preparing for war. That is the message he's sending. So I would personally like to hear what NATO has to say about the testing of this nuclear capability. Now, if it is true, I understand NATO calls it Skyfall, the missile. And it's definitely, it is a sign that Russia is prepared to become more aggressive, feels perhaps more threatened. And I'd be interested to see NATO's response. But Russia is all about optics as well. So it's not by accident that Vladimir Putin was dressed in military clothes, that his chief military officer was speaking, that he was talking about this nuclear weapon. He wants to project the image of force, like a leading military country in the world. That is the aim of what he's doing. What is actually happening, I would be very curious, because NATO must know a lot more about this than us observers and analysts know. But it is, if true, it is a worrying development, and we are waiting for NATO's response on this news. We do note that it came out this morning, if I'm not mistaken, but it took place on the 21st, which was, I think, was Tuesday. So this is obviously something laid out. It was like it was like a theatrical production. This is when we're going to say this is what happened, and we're very serious about this. And the aim, of course, is to alarm and scare NATO members and the world that Russia is preparing for war. That is the message.
Alison, of course, this coincides at a time where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is trying to get his hands on these Tomahawk missiles from the United States, but also at a time where Russia's envoy is in the White House and is saying that there is a a diplomatic solution in the works. How do you make sense of all this?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump has said he has no more time for Vladimir Putin because the talks get nowhere. What we know about Donald Trump is he wants solutions. He doesn't like to be kept waiting in the waiting room and being made a fool of. He likes quick solutions. We saw with the Middle East, we see with other of his policies. He has realized that Vladimir Putin is not, or so far has not been serious about peace. And he's come to the conclusion there is no point in meeting him because every time Vladimir Putin meets Donald Trump, whether it's in Alaska or somewhere else, it looks good for Vladimir Putin and it looks bad for Donald Trump. Now, the fact that the Russian envoys who have been sent to Washington are saying that diplomatic solutions are still on the table, again, it's the Russian side that we are still willing to talk. They don't want to be cut out of the picture. Donald Trump is saying, I have nothing more to say to Vladimir Putin. I've done everything I can. He slapped sanctions on Moscow with the two oil companies and their subsidiaries. And that was a sign that talks have, for the moment, have ended. But Russia cannot stomach that. They need the world to think that they are still waiting at the negotiation table, which, according to Donald Trump, they aren't. So I wouldn't believe what Russia is saying. I would believe, in this case, more what Donald Trump is saying, because I think Donald Trump actually would like to meet Vladimir Putin if a ceasefire, if the end to the war was possible. But as he believes it isn't, he's not going to waste his time. And that is his message. I'm not wasting my time anymore. Russia has to be willing for a ceasefire and end to hostilities. Otherwise, I'm not hanging around.
Alison Mutler, it's a pleasure to get your insight on that topic. And here on NewsX World, of course, we will bring you all the updates coming out of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We now move on back over to the Indo-Pacific, where in a key diplomatic meeting between the United States President Donald Trump and Brazilian President Lula da Silva in Malaysia, they signalled a fresh push to strengthen their ties between Washington and Brasilia. President Trump said he's confident the two nations can strike some pretty good deals. That's what he said. That will benefit both sides. While the Brazilian President Lula echoed that optimism, saying there's no reason for any conflict between Brazil and the United States. Let's take a listen in to the US President and President Lula.
We're going to see, we're dealing on it right now, and we'll be discussing it for a little while, and I think we'll probably come to a conclusion pretty quickly. We know each other. We know what each other wants. I think we'll come to a conclusion. I think we'll come to. I've always liked him. I feel very badly about what happened to him. I've always thought he was a straight shooter, but he's gone through a lot.
It is on the agenda today.
He's gone through a lot.
It is on the table today.
It's none of your business.
Primeiro, a imprensa vai ter boas notícias depois que terminar a reunião.
I think the press will have good news after we end the
Antes de
meeting.
começar a reunião, são só suposições.
It's only assumptions before we start the
O
meeting.
Brasil tem todo interesse de ter uma relação extraordinária com os Estados Unidos. como
Brazil is
mantivemos.
hard to reach a deal afterwards.
E eu estou convencido, eu disse antes de chegar aqui,
And I am
eu
convinced,
estava
and I said before I
otimista.
came here,
Eu estava muito otimista com a possibilidade de nós avançarmos, sabe, na manutenção da relação mais civilizada possível entre Brasil e Estados
I was
Unidos.
very optimistic to
pretendemos manter.
advance the relationship between.
The talks come as both leaders look to expand trade cooperation and reset bilateral operations. We are now joined once again by Professor Rohan Gunaratne. Professor Gunaratne, it seemed just about a month ago when Donald Trump was stood at that United Nations podium personally attacking President Lula, that this relationship was, first of all, beyond repair. Second of all, when before Jair Bolsonaro went to jail, he was keen for that trial to be completely overturned. And now the two are sat next to each other in a room in Malaysia. What are your thoughts in the two trying to kind of rekindle this diplomatic relationship in Kuala Lumpur?
The U.S. has reassessed the ties between Brazil and the US, and they have decided that it is favorable to the United States to restore the relationship because Brazil's trade started to increase with China. So in many ways, because of the geopolitical competition between the US and China, now Trump decided to work with Brazil. There will be cooperation on not only trade and economics, but also in other fields. What is important to understand is that South and Central America, Trump faces many challenges, and for him it is personally important to strengthen the relationship with Brazil, given the deteriorating ties between the US and Venezuela, as well as, of course, US North America ties with Canada. So I believe that there has been a complete shift in the US position with regard to Brazil, as you have mentioned, Thomas.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Rohan Gunaratne. We'll just sit and wait and see how that turns out. But we stay in Southeast Asia for our next story, and mourners gathered in Bangkok's Grand Palace and Chula Korn Hospital to pay their respects to Queen Sirikit, Thailand's former queen and mother of the current monarch. King Vajiralongkorn, the royal palace, confirmed that Sirikit died on Friday at 93 from complications of blood sepsis. Beloved for her devotion to charity and cultural preservation, Sirikit was the widow of King Bhumibol Abdul Yazej, Thailand's longest reigning monarch. Their portraits long symbolised unity and tradition across the nation. A period of national mourning has begun, with thousands lining up to honour the late Queen, remembered as the mother of the Thai nation. Let's listen in to some of the mourners who are paying their respects.
มันไม่เป็นความเหน็ดเหนื่อยครับมันเป็นความสุขที่เราจะได้ถวายงานพระองค์ท่านครั้งสุดท้ายที่จะได้ร่วมส่งเสด็จในวันประวัติศาสตร์
อยากจะมาส่งเสด็จพระองค์ท่านแม้แต่จะเป็นรายทางที่เห็นแค่รถขบวนเสด็จก็อยากมาเพราะว่าเมื่อก่อนสมัยตอนเด็กๆอะค่ะแม่ก็จะพามารับเสด็จในหลวงพระราชินีในพระบรมมหาราชวังแบบเนี้ยก็มานั่งรอกันเป็นวันๆแบบนี้ก็คิดว่าครั้งนี้เป็นครั้งสุดท้ายก็อยากจะส่งเสด็จพระองค์ท่านเหมือนกับส่งเสด็จในหลวงรัชกาลที่ 9ก็มาแบบนี้เหมือนกันค่ะ
ที่ผ่านมามันกับพ่อเราที่สิ้นไปนะครับก็เสียใจเป็นอย่างยิ่งนะครับเพราะท่านเป็นแม่ของแผ่นดินก็เหมือนแม่เราก็เสียใจพูดอะไรไม่ออกครับก็ประเทศเราเสียบุคคลที่เป็นที่เคารพยิ่งของปวงชนชาวไทยนะ
ก็เหมือนกับทุกคนนับพระองค์นะคะก็เห็นแล้วก็
มุ่งหมายเดียวกัน
ใช่ค่ะ
ประสงค์พระองค์ท่าน
ใช่ค่ะก็เห็นแล้วก็ปิติค่ะที่ทุกคนมาเหมือนกับให้กำลังใจพระเจ้าอยู่หัวด้วยนะเจ้าค่ะ
Hundreds of young Peruvians have marched in Lima demanding for justice for a slain protester and the resignation of the interim president, Jose Geri. Meanwhile, the protesters were carrying cardboard coffins representing those killed in recent clashes and observed a minute of silence for Eduardo Ruiz Sanz, a rapper fatally shot down during the protests on October the 15th. Some protesters have reacted to the situation. Let's listen in to what they had to say.
Esto de emergencia es simple y llanamente para detener la protesta. Hace unas 2 semanas ha habido un asesinato y por el miedo a la protesta, porque se cagan de miedo, porque ya se han dado cuenta que la protesta es lo que le da miedo al Congreso, al gobierno, quieren reprimirla.
El señor Geri representa al Congreso. Prácticamente nos sentimos gobernados por el Congreso, no por un pseudo presidente que en realidad ha estado apoyando estas leyes pro crimen y se ha visto como que poco claro en sus medidas, ¿no? Como que ha ido apoyando por conveniencia, no siendo de Somos Perú y sobre todo su lideresa que es bastante cuestionable.
Now, according to fiscal data, Peru has faced a sharp rise in violent crimes, with homicides increasing from 676 in 2017 to 2,082 in 2024, and extortion cases surging from 2,305 in 2020 to 21,746 last year. Well, that's all we